Howdy, friends and neighbors. It is Thursday. It is Chief in the North night on RGR Football. We're going to get into what we want to see tomorrow night, what we should see coming back. I literally have had 4 hours sleep since getting back in town, so hopefully this still looks okay. I know it doesn't look as good as it did before. We have a couple super chats I need to catch up on from last week. I'll do that before the end of this show. And you guys get to see Seth here in a minute, if I can find wherever he went. So give me a second. Welcome to RGR Football.
You put me on the single screen.
I couldn't resist.
Oh, man. You know what?
Oh, look at that.
Every Thursday, I swear, I'm starting to wonder if my wife has a point that I am maybe a slave to habit. Because I don't think of myself as the type of dude that's like, well, it's Thursday, so I'm going to wear the same thing I wore last Thursday. Yet somehow I consistently wear the same thing on days of the week. And so I've heard the people. I deeply apologize. I can't help it. This tie was a gift. It's a gift. And it looks really good with black. And I prefer wearing black because, as I've said in other weeks, it's easier than working out. And I heard you, though. Your cries have not gone unheard. I'm a man of the people, if nothing else. And so I'm going with a look that makes me feel incredibly insecure tonight. Although the more I look at myself, the more I'm like, you know what? That's not terrible.
Listen, I'm only going to say this once. Leave that button buttoned, okay? This is not Fabio's show.
Look, well, see, now that you've said that, there's only one thing I really want to do.
Ruh-roh. See, Josh warned me about this. For those of you who missed my spot with Josh, it was recorded just after yours, so we were on the same show. Recorded totally different times.
That was awesome.
He warned me about you.
Well, he's not wrong.
No.
I'm nothing if not easy to manipulate, though. If you're just like, hey, don't do that. It's like, oh, I got to try it now. Hey,
now I must.
Yeah, now I must. Hey, you were in training camp. You were at training camp. You were doing very professional live tweets. You did it in studio with Briscoe.
Yeah. I don't know about the professional tweets. I still said rep into the phone. Rep as in repetitions. It wrote rap as though I wanted a chicken spinach wrap.
Well, you know, it could have been perhaps worse or arguably better. It could have been rap as in like gangster rap, and everyone would have been like, what is happening at Chiefs practice today? And that would have been a lot of fun. And so I'm excited to hear some of the things that you saw. You and I haven't gotten a chance. Well, I'm going to pull this curtain back, just kind of let people see. Ryan and I have not had a chance to prep. So no. I'm just going to dive in. I want to hear about what you saw. And plus we get to talk about real football, and there's real football tomorrow. The season is here. It's an awesome time to be alive.
I know. I am excited. I will tell you I'm tired. It was a long trip. Yeah. Shout out to Carrington as well. Got to do it in studio with him. So
Carrington's great.
It's making the rounds. It was a lot of stuff, but there was a lot to talk about, and not just the takeaways from last week, but like you said, what's coming up here. And I think Andy Reid did it to me on purpose. I think he was waiting for me to come in town to say, I'm going to throw a brand new safety in with the ones and see what you think. And I don't know what's going on now. I'm so confused. Literally, I had been up to the point where I was like, Juan's going to be okay. I said it on Carrington's show. And then in the meantime, I don't know. I started to be more concerned. I'm worried about him is what it is.
I don't understand what's happening with Juan Thornhill. And I'm not sure Juan Thornhill understands what's happening with Juan Thornhill. I'm curious. We'll see what the lineup looks like tomorrow night. That's going to tell us a little bit more. I can't tell if this is trying to light a fire under a young player. I'm not really sure what they're doing, and we'll see. I'm not remembering a trajectory like this one, and that's odd. A guy coming in playing virtually every snap his rookie year and acquitting himself really well, suddenly not trusted or something. And it's genuinely bizarre, but we'll see what happens. I've got faith in this coaching staff. They've done a good job, so we'll see. But that's definitely one of the weirder ones.
I will say this. I have faith in Juan. I think he'll figure it out. Whatever the problem is, whether it's physical, whether it's some kind of not letting it all the way loose because of the injury or whatever, I trust that it'll get there. And I know you guys have some questions. We'll try to answer them as we
Every
go.
one of them.
Cole asked about Zane, and I don't know if he makes the roster. Andy could literally be trying to drive me crazy for all I know. I mean, that's how this is strangeness. If he starts tomorrow night, I'll be shocked.
I don't see that happening.
I mean, okay, he doesn't even need to start. If he's the guy that comes in to help Mathieu and Sorensen and do what he did in practice this week, and from one point of view, you could say that should be the expectation, because if you practice with the ones during the week, especially in the preseason when you're trying to figure players out, you would think that you should let him do that in the game and see what happens.
Well, he is from BYU, so.
Right. Matt calls him Sorensen 2.0. Yeah. So
I would just say this, a better version of Sorensen would be a pretty good football player. We'll see. My understanding, I mean, he had a decent college career. It's just the whole thing's weird. I genuinely don't know how to gauge what they're doing. It's weird with Thornhill, but hey, maybe it just turns out Zane's impressed them that much.
Could be. I did see some of his film. I got BYU all 22 before the draft. So I got to check out Wilson and the tight end that I can't remember where he went to. I liked him as well. And Anderson popped a couple times. I'll give him credit. As a college player, he was fine. I didn't think he'd be able to make the leap to be a guy that would break into the 53 in year one. In fact, I was one of the more optimistic on him, if I remember, in the draft cycle. And I think what I said was, I think he could be a strong practice squad player that could earn an eventual 53 slot. Maybe he just heard that or felt that same way and expressed his time range. You know what I mean?
Right. The thing with Anderson, people are going to be tempted to compare him to Sorensen because they both went to BYU. How do I say this? They both share another feature that can't quite put my finger on it.
6'2" hybrid safety linebacker.
Yeah, their amount of hair is very different.
Yeah, that. Okay. I didn't know that.
One thing that I would note, though, is like if you're just going to compare 40s, Anderson was like a 4.4 guy, like a 4.45 guy, 4.4 guy, whereas Sorensen was like a 4.7 guy, even coming out. So just because he went to BYU and he bears some resemblances to Sorensen for some reason I can't quite put my finger on, I would think it would be a mistake to assume they're going to have similar play styles.
Right. I watched him all day, Monday and Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right. He was in the back in either split high or single high, doing what Juan does, unfortunately.
Well, and up until now, Thornhill was the only one who could do that. And
thank you, Obi.
If we could just have one guy who could come in there, and man, I can't think of a third one off the top of my head.
Maybe we can sit down for a one-on-one.
Well, that would be wonderful.
It is now dad joke central here on RGR, folks.
Those are really hard to stop. It was like the L'Jarius Sneed thing last year.
Right.
You remember? It's like, L'Jarius gets a paper cut, L'Jarius bleed. That was oddly hard to stop doing. But I would say this. If they found someone who can do some of the things that Juan Thornhill can do, great. Best of luck for Zane Anderson. Best case scenario for the Chiefs, right, is he comes onto the field, they start him Friday night, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, who's this guy? He's playing incredible. That would be amazing. Statistically speaking, it's pretty unlikely, but who knows? The Thornhill thing is a mystery. Best case scenario, they found another guy that they're genuinely comfortable throwing out there, and a guy with some speed, because they need that on the back end. They need someone who can do that on the back end.
They need me on that wall. They want me on that wall.
Exactly.
Ben Broadbeck, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. And he's talking about the safeties as well. And so to tie in with Juan and Zane discussion, Watts, Parks, Boodle, who else do you think could be in the mix? Take Anderson back out. Obviously, Juan's there. For me, it was coming down to Watts versus Parks with experience, but we saw Boodle play some there last week. He practiced the safety a little bit this week as well. So maybe it's just a look. Maybe it's something coming. I don't know.
I've always liked Watts. I give him the edge just because every time he's been on the field, and I don't know what he's showing or not showing the coaching staff to get more playing time.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has a few physical limitations in terms of like top end speed, but he plays around the ball.
Yeah.
He always has in college and in the pros when he's gotten limited opportunities. He's always around the ball. He's been a guy who's done some good stuff on special teams too. So I think he's the guy that's in the mix. Parks, I thought would be more in the mix than he's been.
Me too.
He played a ton last year for Denver. And you'd think, because he played okay too. It's not like he was bad. And so it surprised me how cheap he came. And so I'm not entirely sure what the deal is there. But, I mean, you had Devin Key, whose time on the field did not go super well.
It wasn't super terrible either, though.
All that matters is one play, Ryan.
Okay. All right.
But it's tough. The problem when you're in the situation that he's in with Key is you don't just have to play as well. You have to play better. And my good friend Nate commented, Nate Taylor of The Athletic, I have famous friends. It's nice.
It is nice. You're impressive.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, my friends are, and that, ipso facto. So man, it's weird not wearing a tie.
You're going to be okay. Don't put it back on.
Well, no, I'm just thinking if I could button this, then I'd look like a priest. But my
I'm not ready for that either.
I think my collar shrunk. That's got to be what happened there. It is cotton, you throw it in the dryer once. So Nate commented that he's still not really sure what's going on. People are being pretty tight-lipped. No one will really talk about it. But he gets the sense that Thornhill just has a pretty bright light on him right now. And that he is expected to really outperform everyone else. Where it's not like a direct competition in the same sense that you might think. But he's expected to play really well. And if he doesn't, that light's getting shined on him. So I have no idea why that would be the case. I think that's weird, but I guess we'll see. But hey, in the meantime, go Zane. I've always liked the name Zane. It was a suggestion for one of our kids' names, not a serious one, and one that my wife immediately was like, absolutely not. What is wrong with you?
You guys have gone to numbers now, right? 13, 16. And height.
We actually just do noises like ugh and flarm and things like that. That first one was the sound I made when we found out we were having our fifth.
Right.
Sorry, Lucas, if you're ever watching this, I love you. You've made my life so much more full of joy. Aww. And I can't even imagine a world where you don't exist. But that is the sound I made when we found out that we conceived you. I don't know what to tell you, son. Hopefully one day you have a fifth child and you'll be like, wow, Dad, I'm amazed you didn't throw yourself in front of a moving train. So there you go. Love you.
At this point, I think you should found a new college rather than send your kids to colleges.
Oh, no. I'm talking to all of them about trade school. I'm always like, you know what stinks? White collar jobs. Oh, this is the worst. God, back to the grind. Oh, you know what's terrible? Having a salary. I got to work 60 hours this week. I'm not making any more money. I do say things like that, actually. But
I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
These are reasons to at least consider a trade. It's like, man, wait. If I learned how to do, some plumbing, I could make similar money. And
you could.
Not go $250,000 in debt. That would be cool. Yeah. So I'm excited. So that was the big thing for you. What were you there? Did they have any pad days while you were there?
Yep.
So what do you think of my theory? And I know we got super chats to get to, and I've written like 3 articles since the last time we talked.
I know you've been busy.
Game. So I do. Are you okay? Can we talk O-line for a minute, or should we use that to roll into the articles I wrote this week?
I have one queued up here, and hi, Julian. And the judge was just going to ask you about that. Thank you for the super chat, Judge. I
don't think so. I think I think especially after seeing what Niang looks like with 11 whole snaps, I would expect to, on a side note, you might see them the whole first half tomorrow, and that would be terrific. And I really love the idea they gave Henny some reps with the starting line. The line needs more reps, and reps with Henny's never a bad thing. Henny, by the way, shout out to him. He looked good.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
Just stop running, Chad. Just stop running.
Yeah,
it's
Chad.
the preseason.
Yeah, Chad, you're in your 30s, bro. I don't run anywhere. This is not something I do.
I gave it up for Lent.
Chad and I are roughly the same age, so just quit running, man. You're in your mid-30s. Just relax. It's okay.
Just a young buck.
Just go fetal. Do what Tom Brady did when the pressure came on him in the preseason. And Tom, you saw him just like nope. He just noped his way to the ground, which is the correct move for a quarterback in preseason. That is the way to do it. It's kind of like Mahomes on that third down. Tried to throw it to Hardman, who I don't think was expecting the ball right then. And he also got his arm grabbed, but people have made up their mind about Hardman, so everyone freaked out. But whatever.
That whole play was a little wonky.
I don't think it ran quite the way they would have wanted it. But you notice Mahomes wasn't like, I'm going to try to buy time. He's like, I'm going to get rid of this ball. And that was an instruction from Andy Reid. Like, Pat, I swear to God, if you don't get rid of the ball within 1.5 seconds, I will bench you in week 1.
You get to 2.5, I'm fining you.
Yeah, I will fine you like your share of the Royals. I don't know. So I think after seeing Niang, long road to a short thought, Judge. My apologies. See, I already went to terminology legal because I see Judge. And what I've seen from Niang, he's got faster feet than you'd think. You're clearly tired because you find me more amusing than normal. And I'm having fun with that. That's actually how I keep my wife liking me. That's why we keep having kids. I want her exhausted so she finds me funny. Or tries to set me on fire because she's irritated. It's either here or here.
Let's not compare how you butter me up to how you butter up your wife again, okay? That made me a little uncomfortable.
You notice I'm slowly losing articles of clothing, Ryan. I don't know why you're trying to fight this. So, anyway, Remmers Niang. You can see why Niang was considered a higher draft pick prior to. He was considered going into his last year in college before he got hurt. He was considered maybe the potential number 1 tackle going into that year. And he played hurt, so it hurt his stock, and then he took a year off. He moves very, very well for his dude his size. He's not that much smaller than Orlando Brown. He is massive.
Yeah,
that was one of the first things when I went to camp. I was just, man, Niang is huge. But he moves well. He's nimble. I think he's probably I think he's in the lead. He's taking most of the starting right tackle snaps, even though Remmers is back. I think they're having Remmers take a few snaps there just to see what it looks like. I'm not sure if Remmers would have looked so bad in the Super Bowl if he wasn't in the middle of just a freaking catastrophe all the way around him. And I said freaking. I'm sorry. My kids might be watching this. I'm sorry. Hold me accountable to that, kids. Anyway.
Uh-oh. That go in the jar?
I don't have a jar.
Because here in America, that's not a cuss word.
Well, look, you know what? I promised my kids I wouldn't use that word anymore. Or C-R-A-P. So
how dare you?
I spelled it. So I think the plan with Remmers, what I would do at least, knowing that you're comfortable with Remmers on the right side, to me, I would slide Niang to the left side because I like his skill set there, and I would put in Remmers on the side you're comfortable with. I think that's your best chance at taking as small a step back as possible. So I think that's the plan, but I do think they're going to give Remmers reps there just because you don't know what happens. You want him to take some reps at left tackle because other than him, I don't know who it would be if something happened to Brown and Niang, which holy cow, would not be great. But
I think they're pushing it, leaving Wiley at right tackle right now. So I would agree with you. And I don't know if Andy would do that. I feel like they might be kind of snake bit after moving multiple positions to adjust for the Super Bowl. I kind of feel like maybe they do want to find somebody they feel is at least passable on one. They can just plug them in and not screw up the other positions.
Sure, not have to move all the way over.
That's what I'm wondering.
I think that really makes sense. And I definitely think that's a less than ideal thing to have to do.
Yeah.
I think Niang's ceiling is significantly higher than Remmers. But maybe if he's playing well at right tackle, do you move him? I mean, That's tough. Maybe Remmers is a much more passable left tackle, which isn't that different from right tackle in today's NFL. It's just not. But not everyone can move around. Not everyone's comfortable with that.
It's very person specific if you can be
Yep.
ambidextrous in this sport.
Yeah, and so I mean, that might be the situation. I think that really the short answer is the only people who will know whether he seems at all comfortable with it would be the coaches.
Yeah.
To me, unless you think that Remmers can play an average-ish level at left tackle, I still think it makes sense to slide Niang over, even though that means displacing two positions. But you're only displacing the right tackle position in a way because Remmers does have experience in the system. But I definitely think they want to avoid we'll put the right tackle at left guard, we'll put the left guard at center, we'll put the right center. They want to avoid doing that again this year.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Eric, you have a good one. How much more difficult did the Seahawks just make things for Veach? Because it's one thing to have Juan in a I wanted to say soul searching, but I don't think that's the right term. Not the spot that you expected him. It's another thing to then now have to look at possibly your two that you rely on the most, with Dan Sorensen being 68 years old at this point. It's a difficult prospect, right? And my whole contention was that if I'm Brett Veach, I wanted to get that done before Jamal Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I don't know.
There's just no. I think everything that I've heard the word timing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they want to wait until after the season because then you've got both Orlando Brown and him.
Yeah.
And that's not a position you want to be in. We just saw how Jamal Adams was able to really put the Seahawks over a barrel because of everything they gave up for him. Now, to be fair, the Chiefs didn't give up as much for Orlando Brown. That's
right.
True. They didn't give up nearly as much, honestly. But they still, the Chiefs are in a weird position with Brown, too, because, they could try to extend him during the season, but does that affect your conversation with Mathieu? Does he get upset by that? Those interpersonal dynamics matter a lot more when you're dealing with your top few players. But the timing issue of it, they just don't know what the cap's going to be in 2022.
Yeah.
Let's
face it, Tyrann's going to be older. We're not talking about another guy that's 25 or 27 even,
My guess, if I were to just guess, I think it's probably more an issue of years than money. I don't think the Chiefs have a problem paying Mathieu 18, 19 million a year. I don't think they have an issue with that. Nor probably should they. But I think guaranteeing that you do it at least 3 more years, as opposed to a 3-year contract with 2 years that you're absolutely locked in,
mm-hmm.
I think that's a little more dangerous.
Yeah.
He is older, and that just is what it is. That's the nature of this game. He's made a couple of big paydays, and so we'll see. But I think that's probably part of it in terms of timing. And then, like you said, after this season, he's another year older. What exactly do you do there, given the age situation? If you got to franchise tag one of them, you pick Brown because Brown's
absolutely.
He's 24, 25. You have to.
And as much as I want the defense to be strong, you protect Patrick over having the defensive captain.
You have to. And while Mathieu's unique skill set allows them to do all sorts of things, maybe if the cornerback room's a little stronger, maybe that's a little less important. Safety by its nature isn't quite as important as offensive line.
That's what it comes down to.
But, I think we're both being really careful because it's not trying to be a matter of any sort of disrespect to Mathieu. But at the end of the day, he's not at the same level for the team's success as Mahomes, obviously. No one's going to argue that. Or Travis Kelce, or Tyreek Hill, or Chris Jones. He might be the second most important defensive player.
Yeah.
But there's just more that goes into that. The question of what happens if you replace a great safety, and versatile safety with an average safety. I think there's some questions with that.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think he would tell you that he doesn't have the impact that Mahomes does either. I think he might bristle a little bit at Chris Jones a little bit. That's him.
And I think he might. I would just say that, yeah. And hopefully anyone, like, say if he were to see that, he would hopefully take the time to see that I'm like Mr. like Chris Jones is on a Hall of Fame trajectory guy. And so that's not a slight to anyone. I think Chris Jones is one of the best defensive players in the league and one of the most impactful as well.
See, I would put Tyrann in the same category, though.
Yeah, I could see that. It's not as directly observable, but it is
right.
There
isn't one stat that can really make or break your Hall of Fame credential.
Right. And with Mathieu, there's a lot more in terms of what he allows them to get away with schematically and how he can kind of fill in the gaps and make up for other people's mistakes at times. Whereas with Jones, it's just the glaringly obvious that's right there. So that's a fair statement. So yeah, I would say it's, you could call it the same, you can call it even. But it's definitely, it's something they have to take into consideration with a guy that's, hitting that weird point in his career. Because of the way Matthew's career has played out, he is hitting another contract year potentially at, what will he be, 31?
No, I think he'll be 30.
He'll be 30 rather than being even 29 or 28. And that's just kind of how it goes.
It's a mental hurdle. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But
so
P-Zone, I hope that clears it up.
Yeah. And he plays so smart that I don't know if it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason he doesn't make contact when he doesn't have to, and that is because he understands longevity, and good for him.
Yeah, that's smart.
But P-Zone, I think we both want it to happen. Maybe it'll happen during the season, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't been this wrong about a contract extension since Kelsey's first one. So,
right, yeah, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet. I assume it's an issue of trying to figure out how to spread everything out, and as they try to figure out, well, what is the 2022 cap going to look like? If the NFL is doing really well, which right now they look like they're going to have a monster year because, the TV contract money's coming. Oh, yeah. The gambling money's coming. And if we're halfway through the season and stadiums are still full to where you're not going to take that same hit, then maybe that's the time you start negotiating, saying, okay, it was just a 1-year aberration. Let's move on now. And then you get one of them signed.
I'm with you. Joseph would like you to sign someone who will dress you better.
You know what? I'll put it back up. I'll do it.
Oh, there he went. Oh, that's perfect. And Joseph, I'm ready to see Willie out there too. I think you guys are going to be impressed.
Yes,
he impressed even me, and I have the high expectations.
I'm very excited. He might be, other than the offensive line, which, by the way, I hope it doesn't get repetitive 2 weeks in a row. But the first thing I'm probably going to write about, maybe the second thing, depending on how everything shakes out, is going to be how the offensive line does. Yeah. Because that's the story of the preseason. Willie Gay Jr., that's a big one too, though. I'm excited to see him.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Holly, welcome. Glad you're back.
Hi, Holly.
Avery has a good point here. He feels like they're trying to see Zane in a situation similar to Key for that 1-to-1, apples to apples kind of comparison, and I totally get that.
Yeah, that could make sense.
Yeah, and at this point, if they're just experimenting, that's kind of how I feel about the corner situation. Like, I'm glad Mike Hughes seems to be improving. I still think Rashad Fenton is a better fit for what they want to do. And I think in the end, he's going to be the guy that starts. If you're talking about a nickel 3-corner set, it's just my thought, but who knows? Thank you, Avery. Stevie says, who is your player comp for yourself? Ooh, that's a good one, Stevie. Once again, and be ready. Here, I'm gonna take myself out when he answers this, Stevie. Be ready to grab the screen.
If I were going to do a player comp for myself, I think my player comp would be Dan Sorensen, which is an interesting thing because I try really hard. There's no one who tries harder than I do I've absolutely maximized my potential. And any given moment, you don't know what you're going to get from me in terms of whether it's going to be something you really, really like or that really makes you wish that, the world had never been created. Those are the variations there. And so I think Sorensen's a pretty apt comparison. I belong here, but I drive you crazy. And so I think that works.
I demand you dye your hair. In fact, that can replace the pepper challenge because Josh and I are concerned about your safety.
Oh, did you and Josh talk about that? Look, I said I would do it.
I know. I'm concerned about you after the fact. Okay.
We'll see.
Sorensen wouldn't care. Bears have a desperate need for O-line. Do you think they trade him Wiley or Allegretti? It's a fair point, Pono, but
yeah, maybe.
I tend to doubt it now with LDT and Long out. If anybody else gets nicked up, like all of a sudden, what is your strength becomes kind of iffy.
And something interesting that Seren Petro mentioned to me when I was talking to him on, I think it was last week. I don't know. I don't know.
I know the feeling.
He mentioned an interesting idea that the injuries to Long and LDT allow them to maybe put them on like the PUP list or something like that, and keep guys like Allegretti and Wiley around, kind of almost like super depth for a while. And I think that's the smart play, because I don't think either of those guys are going to be back for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to maybe have them ready mid-season. Hey, they got healthy. Well, then you can release a guy or something like that, because that would allow them to be comfortable with the 9 guys that they bring in. Because even with those 2 out, you still have a bunch of guys with starting experience, especially along the interior. So that would be, to me, the better direction to go.
I'm with you. I could even see, a trade deadline maneuver kind of thing, I like the Kingsguard comment, Avery. That I'm gonna steal that. I'm just telling you now. That's great. Let's see. Jacob's got something here. How does Willie Gay compare to Micah Parsons athletically? He's better.
Sure, what he said.
Willie Gay is the more dominant athlete, but it is specific. If I remember the numbers correctly, and I'd have to look them up, and if you guys want to, I can look it up and put it on Twitter, but I believe Micah is more explosive in the straight line metrics, and Willie has all the speed, depth, and change of direction beaten.
It's worth noting Willie Gay Jr., tested as athletic as like Isaiah Simmons when everyone was freaking out about Isaiah Simmons. He bested him.
Yes.
And he really is a freak athletically. Now, whether that'll ultimately translate, we'll see. But he's an absolute freak athletically.
Oh, it'll translate.
Don't
make me.
I didn't get
this
to see
microphone.
him practice, so perhaps I'd be as confident as you.
Oh, he wasn't on the field at all when you were there?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
He was still wearing just shorts and kind of wandering around doing his thing.
Well, you'll see it on TV, but I think for you in particular, like when you see it in person, I think it'll stand out because just his blitzability from depth on delays or things that can help Spags still disguise using him rather than a DB.
Right.
He's exceeding my expectations, and my expectations are uber high for him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. What he allows them to do could be really interesting. Yeah.
Kyle, I didn't hear Veach's interview with XM, but I will try to find that. If you have a link, would you put it in the comments, the actual comments, not the live chat comments? I would love to see that.
I heard some things. Here's one thing I would note. Brett Veach had a press conference in which he talked about the idea that Mitch Schwartz and Eric Fisher would be ready to go by training camp and then release them like a day later. And then he had a whole press conference. You remember this? He had a whole press conference on all the left tackles in the draft and all the work they were doing on them. Wow.
And he knew he wasn't taking one of them.
The Brown trade was announced like 45 minutes after the conference ended. He literally knew it was done. And it was so look. Brett Veach has fully learned. His first year, you could glean a little bit from some of the things he had to say. The man is lying to you. Whatever he says. This is I'm basically giving you relationship advice right now. He's lying. That's just what's happening, and that's his job. The relationship advice ended there, but I wouldn't take too much from anything Veach says, to be perfectly honest. At this point, he's learned. Learned.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. That is good gamesmanship. That's part of the job being G.
It is.
Are the Chiefs trying to get Key and Anderson playing time because they already know what they have in Thornhill? Could be. I thought that at first, like get them some looks, get Juan, like take him out of the practice reps, give him more game reps just to get him up to speed with more quality. But at this rate, I don't know. I'm starting to doubt that opinion that I had a week ago, even just a few days ago.
Usually players don't tweet cryptic things unless they think something weird's going on.
Yeah, and I didn't see that. I don't know what it was.
Just like nothing really too bad, just like a thinking emoji and then like a rise up thing. That could mean anything. The Chiefs safeties tweet cryptically. That's their thing.
Don't believe anything Tyrann tweets, period. He himself will tell you, hey, I delete a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he does. He really should. If he were to ever ask me for advice, I'd tell him to tweet less. Now, I mean, he's a grown man. He can do whatever the crap he wants. But I would say, I mean, do you need to, though? Like, to be fair, someone should give me that advice, too. So I'm the guy who live tweeted my own vasectomy. So what do I know?
I'm really thankful I missed that.
Look.
No,
they
I won't. That's the point.
They gave me like Valium in advance, and then they gave me what they called a cocktail of some other stuff. And look, I lived rough between the ages of about 15 and 21. And I have never been that high in my entire life. And so I was just like, I don't know why my wife didn't take my phone. I'm just like, it was so bad. That when I had appendicitis, they put me on Dilaudid for like 6 days. I was like, yeah, it was awesome. But I remember very little of it. I did live tweet watching Bird Box.
Really?
Yes. Some people were mad because that had only been out for like a week. And also, people don't follow me for my opinion on movie films or, anything like that. And I usually try to stay away from non-football stuff. But I was just, I was all high and stuff. And so it was like, Bird Box. I'm going to look that up at some point because I was just, it was bad. But anyway.
Folks, when we start RGR cinema reviews, Seth will be in charge.
Oh, I'd have a hoot with that. That would be a blast.
We can make that into a Twitch channel. We'll just talk over movies.
Yes. It'd be like Mystery Science. Yeah, it's Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is one of the most, when you catch them in one of the good ones, because there's some that aren't quite as good, and it just depends. But once they get rolling, I laugh harder at Mystery Science Theater 3000 when they hit a hot streak of comments. You like have to pause the movie because you just become helpless with laughter. It's one of my favorite things. And Briscoe and I already have a plan at some point because there's like a million movies he hasn't seen. He's never seen like Unforgiven. And it's
he just started drinking last year.
Touche. I thought you were like going like, about someone not seeing Unforgiven. And like, I was about to log off. Like that was like, nope, we're done here. That movie is a great movie. Although I can't watch it anymore. I can only watch like the TBS version.
Yeah, you have kids.
Yeah. Well, and I just I didn't realize how out of control things got very quickly in that movie. But I've dragged us far afield. So
and we're shocked. Ben Bretbeck, thank you for another super chat. I will find a comment hopefully because I'm skipping around here because we're talking about films that we do not 22. We don't usually do that. It's funny. Scott, could this week's game be Darwin Thompson's last in Chiefs uniform? No, he's got week 3.
Yeah. McKinney is bad news for him.
Yeah. McKinney's going to be the real thing as long as he doesn't get pressed into being overused.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an injury where he has to take significant snaps, I worry about it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, I talked right over there. I'll shut up now.
No, you said something that I agreed with.
Oh, hey. Hey, somebody write this down in the chat.
Oh, man.
Okay, so I want, before we forget about it, I need to do a couple of super chats that I got last week that I didn't see because I had all kinds of technical difficulties on Monday. Wow. And in the meantime, think if we covered your whole last piece on pressure, because I don't think we've talked enough about non-Chris Jones pass rushers yet.
Oh, yeah, the one that dropped today?
Yeah.
Let's do it. I'm going to check out mentally while you do the first thing.
Okay. Ben, thank you for yours. DTKC, thank you for yours. I think I have that here. I'm going to try to share my screen real quick so you guys can see what I am talking about. See, I trying to sound like a Minnesotan over there.
I see. You had to zap me back in. Now I'm invested.
DTKC, I thought Pringle looked really good, better than Hardman. Trey Lance would still keep Jimmy G in for another year. And Butker, can we get another kicker for PATs? No, they're not going to do that. Honestly, I'm on the bandwagon that they only need 2 specialists in the NFL when Pat Mahomes is your quarterback. And I think Butker should learn to punt. That's what I think. Sorry, Holly. Trey Lance looked great. Pringle, I thought, did his job. I wouldn't say he looked super great if it wasn't for a mistake by McCole Hardman. But the interesting thing for me, I think Trey Lance is going to be the starter there. It may take a couple of weeks into the season, but he is far and away the better player, in my opinion. What did you think of him, Seth?
I was impressed. He did a good job moving around. He wasn't overly spooked by the pass rush, tried to keep his eyes up. And he got hit a fair amount. Mm-hmm. Obviously athletic. His the ball, you could see with his very first throw, the ball flies out of his hands. Yeah. So I mean, I think he looks like he's got a cool head. He throws with pretty good accuracy. I'd go for it with him. I mean, Shanahan can design an offense that kind of unfolds as the season moves along and adding concepts and stuff. I don't know why you have someone like Shanahan as your coach if he can't build an offense around Trey Lance as the season progresses, and you can protect him by keeping that offense relatively minimal, and then you unfold new concepts every week.
I'm totally with you. Holly, thank you for your super chat that I didn't see on Monday. And I'm sorry I missed you. Didn't realize you were there. We started out, and I got to hang out with Aaron. Aaron's in the chat tonight. Everybody give him a hand. We hung out at camp the 2 days. We were on the hill all the second day because I just didn't feel like walking around anymore. But we moved around the first day. That was probably the problem. So I apologize that I missed you. I love running into people at camp, and I will make sure that we do that next year. And Ben, thank you as well. I know you had a question in here somewhere. I'm not sure. It wasn't in the screen cap, and thank you, Stevie, for doing this. Folks, I didn't get Gooch's latest out today because I didn't finish it. I'm close. So you'll have that tomorrow from Gooch. And then we'll have more content coming for the members. If you are not a member yet, you want to get signed up, jump into the starter level and you get into the Discord. And that's where Stevie corrects me when I make stupid mistakes like this. So that's always a plus. You get content from there as well. I am trying to see if there are other questions, but I want to see just your impression. A lot of questions at defensive end, right? But what's your take on what we saw from Wharton and Saunders last week and the presence of Reed?
So I wrote about this, and I know you'll do me right. I wrote about this on the Chief of the North newsletter. I have 3 articles that dropped since the preseason game. I reviewed every snap of every starting offensive lineman. One was unlocked, the one on Brown and Smith. They did a really nice job. In case anyone's wondering, that would be the short answer. Now, they should. It was largely San Francisco's backups. They should relatively dominate, and they, by and large, did. They cleared the holes they needed to clear, had very few losses across the board. They did a really nice job. So that's step one. We're going to learn a lot more about them, I think, against Arizona because you're going to see them up against starters in all likelihood in a lot more snaps.
Although Taylor Jones isn't supposed to play, as I understand it.
Well, that's a bummer. That would be interesting to see. Man, yeah. Jones is a monster too. So with the interior defensive line, that's the third article that I wrote, and I was really impressed with a few things there. Saunders flashed in a way that he really didn't last year during the preseason, as a pass rusher, and he showed that even with kind of some of the added weight that I think he's got. It's worth noting that, he's in there replacing Derek Nottie at one tech, right? And on obvious passing down, there you had – so I'm going to circle back to Reed. You had on the Niners, I think it was third drive, something like that. You had a second and third down sequence where on second down, Saunders won very quickly to the inside with a nice kind of jab step to one side, goes around the other. Ends up getting around the lineman, does a nice little hand slap on his way by. But he's just too athletic because there's space there. And he gets by in Trey Lance as seeing him coming and just doesn't even see the blitz coming, gets sacked. That leads you to 3rd and long. On 3rd and long, Wharton provides some pressure, forces a check down. And so you had back-to-back snaps where you had guys who aren't named Chris Jones providing some pressure, and that rarely happened last year. The biggest thing in this, it's tough to show, in the medium as we are right now. The video clip is up in the article where you've got just a great angle of Wharton's hands. The interesting thing to me on that particular rush was as he was going in, after he engaged, the offensive lineman actually got a decent initial punch on him. And generally speaking, last year, that was death for Wharton. Not because he wasn't strong enough, but no matter how strong you are, it's hard to just bull rush NFL guards without great hand placement. Like Chris Jones, we talk all the time about his heavy hands and his strength, but he's also got wonderful hand placement. And he's just awesome at it. And what Wharton did was he used his right hand to keep the blocker's left hand off of him, and then displaced the right hand that was on his shoulder, displaced it with a really nice grab and toss aside. I mean, it was really impressive getting a hold of the wrist, seizing them and going. And then he managed to get to half a man and make his way towards the quarterback. And the reason I go into more detail about that, while butchering terminology, because I don't do terminology, is because last year I don't remember one snap like that from last year. Mm-hmm. Wharton won last year the same way that he won when he had a sack later on Saturday, where he just starter steps and goes around. He's just too athletic. Yeah. When there's space and it's Wharton versus a guard or a center, they can't block him by and large. They basically have to guess correctly, and then they can block him. If they don't guess correctly, he just goes right around him. And so Wharton didn't have any, and I watched every single pass rush snap he had last year. I don't remember a single win he notched because of excellent hand usage and placement. That was different. And because Wharton's such a high-end physical player in terms of being such an athlete and having some functional strength, that's an unusual combination. I'm really encouraged by that. And so they're both guys, Saunders and Wharton, that I'm going to keep an eye on. I don't know what you saw when you were watching them, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of them and how they did before we go on and talk about Jarran Reed.
My big thing is that I remember one, I think it was Saunders, with a bit of a dip as well with that outside plant. Like, again, Colin has that ability to change directions. That's his advantage. But the interesting thing to me is the offensive lineman did a good job. I think it was against a guard. And caught him on the outside shoulder and kind of stymied that wrap around.
Yep.
And he came back with the same move the opposite direction and got it home.
Yep.
At least so he got through. And stringing multiple counters together is difficult. And it's something I hadn't seen Saunders in particular do yet. And Wharton only with like once in a while early, like a power to, he tried something else that was unsuccessful. He wasn't as good with his hands, so he couldn't actually hit. He couldn't do that post up and get underneath the arm well enough to make it work. So then he'd have a failed counter, and then he would come back with something else. And so I saw him do that once or twice. But it's that making the second move more effective that I think stood out to me. And we'll see what they do this week, of course.
Absolutely. Worth noting, Wharton also showed on the sack where he got around him. It was mostly just being purely athletic, but the lineman did start to get that right hand on him, and he still swat aside, and he had the frame of mind to actually rip. As opposed to just running. Right. Last year he would have just run.
Yep.
And so you see the intentionality there. Boom, boom, as he goes, and that matters. Mm-hmm. And he does it off a spin move a couple of times too that you can tell he's working on, and he's got the athleticism to stick it. Yeah. It's just he really is gonna need to figure out, I think, some kind of primary power move. He's gonna have to figure out that bull rush.
And it's not, I don't think his arm's long enough to use a one arm successfully. So it's got to be something else.
Right. And that's one of the tough things for him, but some kind of power move to where he can at least set up some of these speed rushes. Because he really, there's a lot to like about Wharton and his potential. Jarran Reed. Let's walk back to the first punt for the 49ers starting offense, mind you. They had a couple first downs. Kyle Shanahan he wasn't running things that vanilla. It was, good stuff.
I think for him, it still kind of was, but to an average offense,
true.
I'm with you.
Yeah, Shanahan's great at his job. I mean, he's awesome. What's interesting to me, just on a complete side note, is how Shanahan and Reed can both be such highly regarded, offensive guru types who are so creative, and their offenses look completely different.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy to me, like how many ways there are to win in the NFL. So you end up in a third down situation, and this is, Reed did a few things. He looks like he's pretty good against the run. Watching him in practice, I was pretty impressed. I mean, he looks like a well above average defender with potential for maybe a little more. What was interesting to me about this third down, you end up, Ben Neiman threatens a blitz, then ends up dropping back. A really nice drop, actually, forces Garoppolo to go off his first read. Jones, because the center ends up not having to block Neiman, helps the left guard with a double on Jones. In the meantime, no one's really getting anything done on the tackles. What that leaves is Jarran Reed alone in space against the right guard. And this is the exact type of situation where Jones was doubled. And so Jones did what he often does when he gets double teamed, is he starts to hold up to look to swat the ball. And that's why this one clip made the rounds last year. They're like, Jones is quitting on the snap.
Right.
And it drove me. He clearly knew he was doubled. And it's okay. I'm not going to get there, so I'm going to see if I can knock this down. That's the best thing you can do. Yes, especially when you've got the arms like him and you're good at it. And it just drove me crazy, but I digress. So Jones is doing that, and he's got both blockers still on. I struggle not to call them defenders because they're defending the quarterback. And so that leaves Jarran Reed alone one-on-one. Last year, in this situation where they're just rushing 4, no games, and Jones isn't in a position to where he's schemed into having a one-on-one, and sometimes he would still split double teams, but where they properly executed double team against him, the Chiefs rarely got pressure. Usually in that situation last year, the quarterback had time to go 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe go to the second play, right? Tuck the ball and start moving around a little bit as receivers start to play a little more street ball. They usually had 4 or 5 seconds in those situations, which is an eternity in the NFL. Here, Reed, he doesn't get quick pressure, but he does get pressure probably at around the 2.5 second mark is when he really starts to get in the quarterback's face. And what's interesting to me about the snap is he's just hand fighting the guard the whole way in. They're both just displacing hands. And Reed just keeps on pushing through, and manages to get to half a man eventually, gets in Garoppolo's face, forces a check down way short of the sticks. It's not a terribly impressive win or pressure, but it is a win and a pressure. And you hardly saw that last year when it wasn't Jones winning. That's hugely impressive, even if Reed's only able to do that once per game. If it's on third down, that's massively impactful.
Absolutely.
And it was a really, really fun demonstrative snap of why Reed is good and how he wins. It's not that Reed isn't overwhelmingly strong, but he's stronger than average. Mm-hmm. He's not overwhelmingly quick, but he's got a little more lateral agility than a lot of defensive tackles. He doesn't have incredible hand usage, but he's got good hand usage. And he does have a really relentless motor. So he's above average at everything. And he's just relentless. And so that's a tough guy to leave one-on-one. Yeah. So
and he's pissed off all the time.
He is. He plays like it. He's like, you're trying to block me.
Intensity goes a long way. Thank you, Tasmanian Devil.
That's what it looks like. And he never quits. His hands never stop. He never stops trying to move towards the quarterback. Doesn't matter what the situation is. And that works. It's worked for him. And that gives me a lot of hope, along with seeing some of the ways Saunders and Wharton are winning. The Clark thing, the hamstring thing, that's a bummer. We'll see. We'll see if he's healthy this year. But if he is, I think Reed's shown enough to say, I think Reed is a guy that if he's your second pass rusher, as long as let's say you've got a great first pass rusher like you do with Chris Jones. If Reed is your second pass rusher, you're in pretty good shape. If he's your third pass rusher, you're in tremendous shape.
Yes.
And that's where the distinction is going to be this year.
Well, I can't argue with any of that. Stevie wants to know when you wear the blue and orange.
You guys are mean.
Where?
If blue was slimming, I'd wear that more often too.
Scott, I like Fordson. You guys know I'm pulling for him. Tight end 2's a stretch. They want Noah Gray.
Dare you?
Yeah, the truth.
What?
They want Noah Gray to be the 2.
They do. I think that's probably what happens.
Yeah, me too.
I just think Jody Fordson can play, man. This started as a bit, sort of. But
it ain't no bit.
Fordson can play. And we'll see how he continues to do.
I put it this way, and everybody, including Matt, tells me I'm wrong. Blake Bell's too good a blocker. It outweighs the pass catching ability. They kept Demetrius Harris for his pass catching ability. And he has 17,000 linemen that he feels can play. You don't need a blocking tight end. Run 6-0 line. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to hear this anymore. Avery, thank you. O-line story is the story of the preseason. But if you had to say who or which group becomes the story of the season, who do you go with? Not named Patrick. I think it could be Willie. Do you have somebody in mind?
It's the O-line. It's going to be the O-line. That's going to be the story of the season. And partly because they really, when I wrote about them, like my preview portion for the articles on the O-line, the odds of them being bad enough to derail the Chiefs from being a Super Bowl contender are vanishingly small. They would have to be terrible. Abjectly terrible and even then, they could still be a Super Bowl contender. It would just be a much longer shot, barring injuries, et cetera. Yeah. But them being excellent, it completely flips it. If the O-line is excellent this year, the Chiefs become a virtual, not lock because anything can happen, but they become an incredibly hard out for anyone in the AFC or anyone in general. So they're the story of the year. Willie Gay, I don't know if he's going to – I think he's going to have a good year. Because of the nature of his role, I think it'll be tough for it to become the season of Willie. And if Anthony Hitchens is even he looked a little quicker out there.
Lighter is better for Hitch.
Lighter is better for Hitch, especially with what the Chiefs are asking him to do. And he was still hitting hard. If Hitch is 5% quicker, I think he plays well enough that Gay doesn't really become the story. Although he could. Gay, you can't rule out Gay making 4 or 5 incredible plays a game and really becoming the storyline. But I think there's too many other things that could overtake him. I think Jones is going to have an unbelievable season. Yeah. And I think that's going to overtake that as well. So I think it's the offensive line. That and Tyreek Hill might even be a little better at route running this year. I don't know if you saw that in camp too, but no one could cover him.
No, it's silly.
He's always taken a few too many steps, rounded out routes a little bit. He's not a bad route runner. That stopped being the case. After his second year, he started to become an okay route runner, and he was a good route runner last year. I think he might be a really good one this year, and I don't know how you cover that.
They already can't, and if he gets cleaner at his breaking off his stem, it's going to be ugly.
And I saw some of that in camp. I was curious if you saw it too.
I saw 2 plays in particular. One was a deep cross that he tried to settle down on. Then Mahomes broke the pocket, and he just took off, shook his guy loose, ran past the safety, and was coming right at me. I'm standing at the corner of the end zone right behind that fence that we always stand at. Oh, yeah. And he literally caught the ball at the 7, ducked a defender, and was in the end zone before anybody blinked. It was crazy. He's so good. So that could be a story too. There's just a lot of storylines on the Chiefs this year because there's a lot of talent. Yeah. But the offensive line, especially with 3 rookies, I cannot say how rare this is. It's just it is going to be a cool thing, especially Andy Reid does not like starting rookies, people. I know Mike Clay, I think it is, who I really like. He tweeted out earlier today, hey, the Chiefs might be starting 3 rookies. And I think this was probably just a phrasing thing. He's like, well, on the plus side, Brown and Tooney is a really good left side. But I think that's what a lot of people are thinking, oh, man, the Chiefs are starting 3 rookies. That's trouble. I would just say if Creed Humphrey starts, which he's going to.
I mean, barring something. And just on a side note, Creed looked good. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how things look tomorrow night. But if Creed Humphrey starts, it's because he beat out Austin Blythe, who's been an NFL starter 3 straight years. If Trey Smith starts, it's because he beat out LDT. He'd already beaten him out. Keep that in mind.
Exactly.
He was taking all the reps after Long got hurt. So there's some injury stuff there too. There is there. Some. Not a ton though. And to be fair, Matty V, he's been saying that they wanted to start Trey Smith since like Jump Street. Like he's like the team really likes him. He's kind of blown their minds.
I heard about him on day 2 of OTAs.
Yeah, they were just like, man, this guy's blowing our mind. Yeah. I mean, there was a reason why Andy Reid even said, like, there's a reason why he's with the ones now. He's earned it with consistency. And he looked solid out there. If Lucas Niang starts at right tackle, it's because he beat out a veteran that they trust in Mike Remmers. So I think it kind of misses the boat a little bit in terms of the Chiefs roster construction to just, they're just starting 3 rookies. Because that makes it sound like they won by default. It's not like there's anyone out here saying, hey, you better start that 6th-round rookie. Oh, man. Now Niang and Humphrey were drafted a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like anyone was screaming for them to start it. Well, I was screaming for Humphrey to start immediately. But they don't care what I think. It's not like there was pressure from anywhere else for people that actually matter.
Right. I tell you what, I agree. My only thought is if the O-line gels and they're solid, because it's the O-line and because when you're good, you're not making headlines, I feel like maybe it doesn't get the press that it deserves. Maybe there's another storyline that takes it over. And if that does happen, my guess is it's LJ Snead becoming not just a good rookie, but a damn good player. That's my thought.
He looked really solid too. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe.
He ran
drop.
step for step with Tyreek at least 3 times that I saw this last 2 days.
He looks great in practice. He made one at least really nice tackle on Saturday. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop because with the way Saturday played out, it really was Johnny Cash. Maybe I am. And
you walk a line. It's okay.
Yeah. It's interesting how well Saturday went for the Chiefs in terms of some of the guys that they're looking to do stuff. You know, Hitch looking a little bit quicker. That's a big deal. Snead looking really good. That's a big deal. The line playing well. That's a big deal. So I'll be honest, because of the way I think, even though the Chiefs have broken all the curses, they've done all this awesome stuff. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop because one thing that has been at least a question mark or debatable in the Veach era has been the drafting and the acquiring of young players. And right now, I mean, man, it looks like they've knocked it out of the park with some of these acquisitions, and that's going to make it just feels too good to be true. So we'll see how it goes. I'm just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop, but I'm going to be watching that offensive line really, really closely.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Joseph, just to answer your question, I do think the first team O will score this week. Do you, Seth?
Yeah, I'm guessing they're going to be on the field for a lot longer than one drive. And that they're just hard to stop from scoring. We'll see how it goes. Every game is its own entity, but my guess is, Mahomes, you could tell he was a little annoyed after that first drive. That dude hates even some perceived form of losing. And so I'm really excited to see them. I assume they're going to score. If we're going to do over, I'd do an over if I had to pick over or under.
Okay, cool. Folks, we're going to hit the last couple questions, the last couple super chats, and then we'll wrap it up for you. Scott, looking back at free agency and his contract negotiations, is it possible that Veach might be overplaying the Mahomes card by expecting Tyrann to take less? Tyrann volunteered that, so I don't know that it's the expectation is my point. But if you're the GM, that's what you got to do. You got to convince your stars to not break the bank every time so that you can keep them together. So I feel like he's doing what he should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, especially, again, you got a guy who's pushing 30. That's a tough type of negotiation. And I don't think Mahomes' contract forces anyone to do that, but it probably comes up.
Mm-hmm.
What can you do? And at the end of the day, there is something to be said for saying, look, yeah, sure, you can go and the Jags can probably pay you more.
Yeah.
Or the Texans or someone. But
That's why they're the Jags.
And generally speaking, that's why top-end free agents, if they're not locked up and franchise tagged and controlled, that's why they usually go where the most money is, because it's a job. And I don't begrudge anyone that. If Mathieu says, hey, this is probably my last big payday, I want to be paid like the highest paid safety in the league, more power to him. But if the Chiefs decided not to do that, I wouldn't be thrilled. If I were them, I'd be willing to pay him that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
But if they decided not to, I wouldn't freak out, because you can't make every position the top paid position.
Exactly.
And you gotta figure it out. So that's and I think I'm curious if that kind of ambivalence that someone like me is feeling might affect these negotiations, where they say, man, it would be a bummer if we lost this dude. But it might. It's not the end of the world, and that Tyreek Hill extension is coming, and that's going to be a lot.
Tyreek and Orlando alone are going to be a lot.
Yep.
Gold Towel, thank you for your super chat. We appreciate it. Teams have built themselves up to stop the passing attack. Hope that our new line and rookie tight end can power run on them. Do you ever see us getting a pounding runner? First, the rookie tight end in terms of Noah Gray is never going to help you in the run. That ain't happening. And I don't know that I ever see them getting a pounder like Derrick Henry or something like that. That's just not Andy's thing.
I think whether or not you pound someone with the run has a lot more to do with your line than the running back. I think you can pound people into submission with Clyde Edwards-Helaire perfectly fine. The big thing for them, it's going to be about running efficiently when they get the opportunities. They weren't as good against light boxes last year as they should have been. Mm-hmm. Clyde, statistically speaking, was actually pretty good, but they just weren't quite. Maybe the run blocking was atrocious. And that's where it's really going to matter, is what the line does. Clyde's a guy who can take advantage of the yards you give him. He's a little too small to really drag defensive linemen, the way like a Derrick Henry might. But
like he did in college.
Right.
He did that in college, but that was a different thing.
Secondary players and linebackers, though, he can drag just fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I do think teams are gearing up to stop the Chiefs' passing attack. I think the way that the Chiefs control that is by a couple things. One would be bringing back the screen game, which I don't know if that was a point of emphasis while you were there. It certainly was while I was there.
It was not. And hopefully that means that they got what they wanted out of it, and they're going to put it away till the regular season.
And man, all of those guys, with the exception of Brown, look unbelievably comfortable in space. And we know Brown can get vertical. He just doesn't have a lot of change of direction.
Right.
And he's smart about where he goes. And that's the thing. Being as big as he is, he just needs to be in the way. Just sprint downfield and be in the way with your massively long arms and force defenders to go around you. Yeah. Niang looks super comfortable in space, though. That surprised me. So I think that's how you slow down.
Well, they did that some at TCU.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry.
And so I think that's how you,
now,
more so than the power run game, I think that's how you help the offense with screens, draws, and maybe handing it off a little more often during RPO action.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, but I don't know that we're going to see a ton of it, you guys. Holly, glad you made it back. Todd, I'm totally with you. Thank you for the super chat. He said, less vasectomy talk, just saying.
You clearly haven't seen a lot of me, Todd.
Easy.
part of my brand. I don't know what to tell you. Snip, snap, snip, snap.
Paddock, I hope you got enough out of what we were saying before about Creed. Creed's looked great. Creed is the classic. Smart dude, a lot of experience, wrestling background. He's going to be fine.
Check out some of the stuff Brandon Thorne had to say about Creed. He didn't, and again, I charted every snap of his. He didn't have to be in any one-on-ones in pass pro, but he had a couple of really strong anchor snaps where whether it was Trey Smith or Joe Tooney, didn't really have to help him at all. They kept one hand there because that's what you do, but he showed more anchor, and I know that's something that Dan was concerned about.
Yeah.
And he looked good. Oh, and I know we're trying to talk about a billion things. Joe Tooney was left one-on-one a lot.
And
he acquitted himself really well.
Yep.
Again, against backups, that's what he should do, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. So, but it schematically allows them to do some things differently. But I think one thing you'll notice with Creed, you're going to see a difference with these interior double teams and bunching. That pocket was beautiful.
I also think I've seen, if I remember correctly, Creed in college was very apt at double teaming by knocking the snot out of somebody and sending him back towards the guard so he could then turn around and help the other side as well.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be Yeah, I think there's going to be A-gap runs that are going to be there because of him particularly.
I agree. There's a lot of options there. We'll see. Again, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, and biggest way it could happen would be like, holy crap, the line looks terrible. So we'll see.
Okay, rapid fire. Ben, thank you again for the third super chat. Appreciate it.
Good Lord, Ben.
I didn't see a comment with it. I'm trying to scroll for that, but hey, we'll get there. Sean Christensen, I agree with you. I think Baker was a steal in the situation. We got to remember there's a lot of off-field stuff with him. We'll see if that happens. This one for you, Seth. Does Ward make the 53?
Man, he made a great case for it on Saturday. We'll see how consistently he can keep getting such great jumps at the line. Some guys are just awesome at that. That's hard to do consistently when it's not necessarily explosion, it's timing the jump. And it seemed as though he really had something figured out.
Yeah. It was also against threes. So
it was against threes, but he did. I mean, Ward has a pretty decent combination of length, strength, and some athleticism. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see. He made a good case for it. And when he played a little bit last year, I thought he acquitted himself pretty well too. So I think he's got a shot, especially with some of the questions at defensive end right now.
Yeah, I agree. Trey, you want to start Kyle Pitts? I guarantee you that.
Yes, you do.
Holly, this is from Modfather. Thank you. That was very, very kind of you. Aaron's got one for you, Seth. Amari Cobb or Harris?
Harris.
Okay. Julian, by the end of the season, where do you think the Chiefs O-line will be ranking? Top 5 or no?
Top 8.
Top 8. Okay. I can dig that.
I just realized it was 7-12, so I'm like, holy cow.
Hey. Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to make sure we don't blow any like that when I hit the wrong thing. Are those records behind you? Oh. I mean, what is a record? Yeah, whatever. Building a sensory program for your brewery. At last. Yes, I do consulting for breweries as well, you guys. Let's see.
The world's most interesting man.
Come on. And don't tell anybody, but yeah. Every now and then I got to look stuff up in an actual book.
Good Lord. Sounds horrible.
Yeah, I know. It kind of sucks. So that's what's in the bookshelf, guys. I don't see any other question marks. If you guys have anything else lingering, let me know. Cole has a prediction, but that's not a question, Cole, I don't think.
Yeah, Cole.
What's your bold prediction about Mahomes? What do you think his career is going to be, Seth?
Awesome.
Well done.
Barring injury, Mahomes is going to be in the debate as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. That's just it. That's like a fact at this point. Like no one even really debates that he's the best quarterback in the NFL at this point.
Nope.
Which, considering the year Aaron Rodgers just had, is insane.
Well, considering Aaron Rodgers is who he is, he's not putting up a stink about it.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, thank you very much. We appreciate the support. If you have a question, I'll find it, but I don't. Oh, you do. I lied. I didn't scroll fast enough. Why haven't I heard anything about D-Rob throughout camp? Because D-Rob is D-Rob. He hasn't done anything crazy or spectacular because there isn't really anything crazy or spectacular to do right now.
Yeah.
The good thing is that you're not hearing about him in a negative way.
Yes. Yeah, he is who he is. They know he's a guy. If they have to play him a ton of snaps, it's going to be okay. They probably would like to upgrade, but Robinson will do his job. And he'll have a couple of big-time catches this year, I guarantee it.
Yeah, on broken plays especially.
Yep.
And by the way, shout out to Byron Pringle. I think he's going to be fine. I know that look that Snead gave him the other day in the parking lot hurt, but it's going to be okay. If you guys missed that, Colin Saunders, go check his Instagram out. That's going to wrap it us for me. Oh, I said something about your super chat, Stevie, I swear. On which day does Seth wear orange and blue?
And it hurt my feelings, Steve.
And you could hear his eyes roll around in his head. It was good.
Made me sad.
Aw, all right. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for us. Before he puts the tie back on, it makes me nervous. We're going to get out of here. Don't become a member, do the stuff, join, click, like, sub, do the things. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.